It's good to have everyone here this morning and to celebrate this beautiful occasion. Years ago, after graduating University of Texas, I was so excited. I graduated college and I was accepted into rabbinical school, and I was heading to Israel to study to be a rabbi. And I thought my professors, classmates would welcome me with open arms. And some did, but many did not. Many of them questioned, what was a guy from Texas doing studying to be a rabbi? What was someone who was in a fraternity doing, thinking they could be a rabbi? Or someone who didn't grow up observant at all? How could I be a rabbi? And some said, classmates, even professors, that I would never make it as a rabbi. It wasn't the easiest year. And some of my classmates, believe it or not, were not some of the best people. We all have them. People in our previous lives that we wish we could see now. Show them what actually happened. Tell them they were wrong. Give them a piece of our mind. Finally get rid of any grudges we may have. But what really happens when we see them in person? In this week's Torah portion, Esau and Jacob meet again after 20 years, and the encounter has the potential to be quite violent. After all, Jacob bribed and stole Esau's birthright and his firstborn blessing. Jacob had to flee, knowing that Esau said he would kill him. And now, 2 decades later, Jacob learns that Esau is coming to meet him with an army of 400 men. Jacob is justifiably nervous. Esau finally has his chance. But what does Esau do? V'yaratz Esau likroto. Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, fell on his neck, and kissed him. And they burst into tears. Esau falls on his brother's neck and kisses him. No one saw that coming. But like Esau, don't we usually do the same? An old teacher, a colleague, a high school classmate, someone who wasn't so nice to us. Maybe they made life difficult, perhaps even wronged us. But over the years, we think that we finally have the chance, we're going to do something to show them just how angry we really are. But in the end, when given that chance, do we actually do anything at all? Now, when I see those same colleagues at conferences or rabbinic seminars, I don't say anything. In fact, I think I'd be embarrassed to say something. Who wants to admit that they still hold a grudge, especially for someone they don't like? Maybe that's what allows Esau to forgive or to let go or to even embrace his brother. Maybe he just didn't want to admit to Jacob that he still harbored any ill will. For Esau, why give Jacob the pleasure of knowing how much grief he's caused him over the years? Or perhaps Esau came to see what had happened is not such a big deal. Aren't there times when we look back at something that happened years earlier and at the time we thought was the most important thing in the world? And then years later, we realize that perhaps what we thought was so important has become less over time. In fact, maybe we realize what was so bad at the time turned out to be a great blessing. Often when I meet with middle school or high school students or having a difficult time at school, dealing with classmates that aren't so nice, I remind them that those middle school or high school years are so fleeting. They're so quick. And in the big picture, they're so unimportant. To not lose sight of the bright future they have ahead of them. To remind them that there is life past middle school and there is a good life past high school. And to remind them that perhaps what they see is so bad at the time can turn out to be a great blessing. While at the time it was difficult for me to bear some of the abuse of my rabbinical school classmates, yet it helped me realize how important it was to be compassionate to others who are different. And perhaps the experience made me a better person, or even a better rabbi. Maybe Esau felt the same. He's done all right for himself. Esau's rich, he's a powerful man with a large, loving family. Perhaps Esau realized he was better off without the burden of his father's birthright and blessing. Maybe Esau sees what Jacob did as a godsend. Or maybe Esau just comes to see what happened so long ago is not that big of a deal. He simply moved on, made the best of the blessings he still has. Maybe Esau realized that it's a lot healthier to let go of our grudges by moving on, by forgetting, by letting go, by erasing what happened from his memory. In his remarkable book, The Mind of a New Monist, Russian psychologist Alexandria Luria describes a man who had an extraordinary memory. Show him a page of several hundred random numbers, and he could instantly remember them in order. Read an entire opera to him in Italian, and he could instantly remember the entire opera. Go to him 15 years later, and he still remembered the entire opera word for word. It was an incredible memory. And so you would think that this man's life was fantastic. He could remember anything that ever happened. But it turns out that the man would have done anything to have this special talent removed. It was more of a curse than a blessing. His unbelievable memory made him hold on to every time someone slighted him, every time someone was unkind to him, every time someone broke a promise. His mind became so cluttered up with things he wished he could forget. Basically, he couldn't hold on to any type of friendship, not even relationships with his family, because the memories of other people's misdeeds held him back from ever maintaining a personal connection with anyone. And the man ends up miserable, withdrawn, alone in the world. In our tradition, we refer to God as Zocher HaNishkahot, the one who remembers all that is forgotten. According to the Jewish tradition, only God can handle remembering everything. None of us should ever have to bear that terrible burden. Yes, no matter the reason, when we encounter someone who wronged us after years later, when we finally encounter that person, we often don't say a word. Maybe it's because we don't want the other person to know we're still hurting, or we see what happened as a blessing, or we found some other ways to forget what happened. And because I think we all know deep down inside, when we move on from our hurt and our anger by letting go, it's not just the other person who benefits. More importantly, we ourselves benefit. In my work, some of the most depressed people I encounter and counsel are those who are constantly living with resentments and grudges. I've seen that the energy it takes to harbor anger, harbor hatred, and harbor bitterness towards others, it's exhausting. I think we all know it's not easy dwelling in the past and at the same time preparing for an imagined future encounter with the one who wronged us. Can there be a better use of our energies? Pastor Joel Osteen offers a great analogy. He writes, "One time I was walking through a large office building, and there were two sets of double doors about 15 feet apart. They were both automatic doors. When you walked through the first set of doors, you had to let them totally close before the next set of doors would open. As long as I stayed at that first set of doors, the second set would not open." It's the same principle in life. If you're sitting around nursing your wounds, feeling sorry for yourself, harboring resentments, you're not going to see anything new. You've got to let those doors totally close behind you. And only by doing so, only by letting go, can you enter some new doors in your life. Often portrayed as the great villain, by embracing his brother Jacob this week, Esau sets a great example for us all. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.